Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at The Valley of Flowers, Wildendrim Volume 1 by Jedediah Barry and Andrew McAlpine. This is an adventure for old school essentials, or really any old school form of D&D, including my own system. Knave 2nd Edition will work perfectly well to run this adventure. And it's also designed for Cairn, and there are stats for both of these inside the book. The description on the back says, Aerthur, the Horned King, is missing. In decadent Noloon, unchecked prosperity feeds a wilderness blooming with dark miracles. The golden age is ended. New adventures unfold in the light of a ragged sun. This is an adventure that has seen a whole bunch of praise from around the internet recently, especially at the most recent ENnie Awards, where it was nominated for and won the Silver ENnie for Best Setting of the Year, as well as being nominated for Best Product of the Year. So that's very high praise. We're going to take a look through this book and decide if it really lives up to that very high praise it's been receiving and what it's really great for, what are some of the drawbacks, so you can decide for yourself if it is the right adventure for you and your table. As always, links are going to be in the description below for where you can pick this up in PDF or in print form. The book comes with this map. This map would work really well as a player handout because it has a lot of important locations on here, but not all of the locations, many of which are going to be fleshed out as the players explore and go through this path crawl, if you will. As we'll see when we look at the actual book, it is also a hex crawl. It's broken into these big hexagons. You can see them kind of faintly over here, but really I think I would run it as a path crawl. You travel along these roads and go from location to location. On the back of that map is another one of Cimbrine, which is kind of the main city center for the entire region. The book actually recommends you don't start in this major city because there's just a lot of stuff going on there. Better to start them out in the wilderness with a couple of small adventures and encounters before you actually dive into the politics and the detail of this metropolis. Physically speaking, the book is very nice. It's very solid. It's very well bound. I think it has stitched binding in there. There is a bookmark here, and there's information on the inside covers, front and back, of stuff that you're probably going to be referencing pretty frequently, like our map right here. You can see a number of the locations, especially over in the Gnarl and over in Brobden Wood, that weren't on the player-facing map, so things that they can discover. One thing that I think could be improved is the cover design. It's kind of interesting. It has this kind of cut-out paper look to it, where you have small creatures among the flowers here and this reflected city on the bottom. But it's just a little bit vague. It doesn't really tell you very much about the adventure, and it didn't really grab me, personally speaking. So it sat on my shelf for a little while before I decided to pick it up. But once I actually went through it, I was really impressed with what I found inside. This is a mythic, fairy tale-esque, that seems to be a popular theme these days, kind of post-Arthurian setting, where there is Aerthur, kind of like Arthur, the Horned King, who ruled this land and kept things in a good state, but he has left, his court has left, and things are beginning to fall apart again. In its history, there is once, which is the ancient times, the era of saints, the golden age where Aerthur was ruling, and then now. Aerthur is missing and the sun has gone strange and monstrous. The steward Unther, a hollow suit of armor, makes oracular proclamations, mystifying the old king's ministers. The whole land is slowly going weird, including the sun, which changes into different strange things every time. So roll every morning to see what the sun is doing, like it's shining blood red and thumping with a steady heartbeat, or weeping softly to itself. So that gives you a sense of the tone of this book. It's very high strangeness, but mixed with a lot of old school fairy tale themes. Some of the factions in this land include the Silvered Nobles, the Conclave of the Ordered Firmament, which is like the church, and the Riverkeeper League, which is kind of like the people from before Arthur took over. I'm just going to call him Arthur, it's easier to say, who believe in the old gods and the old ways and are resisting the changes that Arthur brought about. There's also the Stevedore Knights, or the Order of the Inviolate Passage, and the Selenians. These are 4 armed beings who reside on the moon and are largely absent from present-day Noloon. Throughout the book, we see that the artwork is, for the most part, taken from old Creative Commons illustrations, and they're pretty good. There's a good sense of taste to them in terms of putting them together and trying to create the right tone. But in my opinion, picking a lot of public domain art is never going to feel as cohesive as finding an artist to just illustrate things according to your vision. Unfortunately, that is expensive. A lot of people can't afford that. So I understand when people use public domain art, but it is what it is. There's also a system here that feels very Arthurian, which is oaths. These show up a whole bunch of times throughout the adventure as things that you can pick up. And if you commit yourself to an oath, then you also get a number of quests associated with it. There's usually 4 quests for each oath. So this oath is a little example here. You commit yourself to the destruction of earthly kingdoms and dethroning of oppressors and the elevation of your fellow folk. And then 2 of the quests might be remove a tyrant from a position of power or aid a poor or powerless person in achieving their own quest. Now, these can only be fulfilled if you do it while pursuing a significant task, like defeating a foe, acquiring a relic, or altering the course of major events, and they must come with an element of mortal danger. So they can't be fulfilled frivolously. If you do so, then you're going to start gaining renown as you complete quests, which means that people are going to recognize you more, and it's also going to give you valor, because if you make a roll while acting in accordance with your oath, that would be this thing right up here, then you can re-roll and take a second result. Basically, you get advantage. You can do this a number of times per day equal to your renown. Now, if you actually fulfill an oath by fulfilling all of the quests, like I said, usually 4 of them, then it recommends you're probably going to want to retire that character. They've done something truly momentous and have shifted the land in a significant way. Although, I guess you could keep playing them if you wanted to. If you break an oath, bad things happen. You're going to lose all of your renown, and you're going to be known far and wide as an oath breaker. Here are some standard stats for different types of creatures you might run into. The blue stats are for Old School Essentials or any old school D&D system, and the brown stats are for the Cairn system. Next, we're going to get into the real meat of the book, which is all of the very detailed locations. But first, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by the Questing Beast newsletter, my own newsletter, which I put out once a month that summarizes all of the best news and sales and theory and advice and world building and more that I discover around the internet. It's completely free to sign up for, so go ahead and check it out using the link in the description below, and I think you will really enjoy it. It's one of the most popular RPG newsletters out there with over 20,000 subscribers, and you can always unsubscribe anytime that you want. Thanks for checking it out. The first of the hexes or regions in this book that we're going to look at is the Verinwine Vale. And each of these regions or hexes follows a similar format. So we're going to look at this one in more detail, and then I'll skim over the other ones a bit more because there is just a ton of content packed into this thing. So each 2-page spread has a little mini map of the region right up here, and each of these numbered locations can be found down here. So first up, we have the Tenthorn Tavern. We have a brief description of what's going on there, and then a number of, like a random table basically, that you can roll on for other things that could randomly be occurring there as well. For example, at this tavern, you might have regulars quietly checking their weapons as D4 Knights of the Golden Promise, corrupt, well-equipped soldiers, grow intoxicated. Or perhaps Havrador Gundlatch is working up a crowd to free poachers from Fort Fluminel. The writing all throughout the book is very good. It's very straightforward. It's to the point. It doesn't get too flowery. It's a little flowery in parts, but it doesn't go overboard. And it gives you what a game master would need right away to be able to run the adventure. I was very impressed with how table ready the whole book is. A great amount of it could be read or could be run directly out of the book without too much preparation. Although, of course, reading the whole book is recommended. Each region has its own table of rumors. So for example, if you pay a visit to the ignoble court, make sure to bring some nice presents. Those monsters love presents. A bunch of NPCs you can run into. There's just so much stuff that you can easily throw at players, and it's all quite gameable. For example, we have Sedan over here, leader of a gang of child runaways, the Dire Lambkins. Under her capable direction, the Lambkins commit minor acts of banditry and espionage. Available for hire. Wants a patron, or else. All of the characters want something. They're all embedded into the setting, and they are there to interact with you and to have you interact with them. Random encounters might be anything from smugglers to Knights of the Golden Promise, or dancing skeletons, paperwork wasps, the Sunflower Knight, or the Wandering Tower. Everything is also extensively cross-referenced. So whenever something comes up, there's always a little page number after it, so you can quickly go to that part of the book and learn more about it. It's really easy to use. You can visit the Ignoble Court, which is a bunch of strange fairy-like creatures that will hold trials and settle disputes, often in very strange ways. You might get curses as a result of it, or participate in games like Hunt the Squire. A servant runs for his life. Whoever catches him first is rewarded with the choicest bite. There's the Wandering Tower. An enchanted stone tower crawls across the land on a mysterious quest of liberation and change. So there's a little bit kind of a Howl's Moving Castle thing going on here, where it's slowly creeping across the land. And later on in the book, you can actually gain like a connection to it, so you can summon it, and it will arrive to help you, although it'll be very, very slow. Here's a really nice piece of what looks like original art for the Ignoble Court. Sunbelow Abbey. So each of these 5 regions or hexes has at least one dungeon-esque location where you can actually crawl through it. There's rooms, they're all keyed, and there's a whole thing for you to explore. These can easily be yanked out and dropped into your own campaign if you want to, although it's densely connected with many other things in the setting, so I think that's where it's going to fit best. At this particular abbey, a murder has been committed, and this violent act has woken up the ancient god of drunkenness who has been slumbering for centuries in the deep-shined vines growing at the heart of the garden. And this has unleashed all sorts of problems across the abbey. 2 of the aspects of the drunken god are already awoken, and the other 3 aspects are waiting to be awoken. And if that happens, then, well, you kind of lose as this being takes over the abbey. But there's lots of different ways that you could stop it. There's 3 factions inside this particular abbey. You have the Deepshine monks themselves, the Knights of the Upended Goblet, and the Paperwork Wasps, these giant wasps that have built a nest in the belfry of the abbey and are trying to impose the rule of their queen upon everyone who goes there. I really like these guys because it's constantly changing the ways that you can interact with this location. So for example, the laws might be that music is forbidden under what circumstances? At night. Or using magic is forbidden unless loudly praising the queen. Or eating and drinking is forbidden indoors. And these can change rapidly. And so you always have to figure out what the current rules of the queen bee is, or the queen wasp is, and try to conform to that, or you're going to get in trouble with the wasps. The format is kind of similar to what we saw in the Merry Mushmen adventures, where there is a brief paragraph that's kind of like read out loud text, though it's not actually marked as that, but it kind of summarizes what's going to be there. And anything that is in bold is going to have more detail with these bullet points beneath it. Each page has little mini maps, so you always know where you are and you never have to flip back to the main page. Everything has really been formatted for ease of use. One thing that we're going to see all throughout this adventure are the many really excellent magic items, like the Potion of Gravitas, where all who hear the character speak will listen carefully. They need not agree, but they must make a save versus paralysis before interrupting or leaving the area. Almost all of the magic items throughout this have a thing that affects the way that the world works, and it isn't just a stat bonus. They're there for players to use creatively, and that's exactly what I like when I see magic items. Each of the different rooms is packed with things to explore, both ordinary and extraordinary. If you're just a player that loves to explore and investigate and go through people's pockets and look for loose change and go through the drawers, then this is just a great adventure all throughout it. There is just a lot of levels of detail where things are usually not glossed over so much. It's made more concrete and more specific. Even the different herbal remedies that you can pick up have ingredients for what they're exactly made out of. So if you have the kind of game where players are actually foraging for different types of herbs, then they can actually combine them to make new herbal remedies. And some of them can be used, again, creatively. Like you have one that is a insect repellent, would be really good against the wasps if you drink enough of it, because they are bigger wasps than normal. And even in a dungeon adventure like this section, there's plenty of social interaction. For example, you can run into these 3 spectral monks. These are the monks that actually committed the murder that started off the whole problems at the monastery. And they seem very repentant and they seem to want to help you, but actually 2 of them are really in it for themselves. They want to either gain a whole bunch of extra power or they want to secure the treasure, even in the afterlife. Only one of them actually wants oblivion and real forgiveness, but you'll have to interact with them and try and tease out their motivations before you can understand that. Here's another great treasure, Mulgrek's Enthusiastic Audience, a pair of 6-inch golden hands. When clapped together, they summon an illusory audience of 2d12 people who will watch a performance with rapt attention, responding with laughter, sighs, and applause as appropriate. It only has 3 charges, but you can restore that by resting them overnight, holding a bouquet of flowers. A great little item that is not immediately obvious how it would be useful, but you know that your players are going to find a way to make it useful, and that's where the fun is. The next section is Brobden Wood, where you can find the Festriff Tree, the 1,000-acre grove, which is a grove that is larger on the inside and can be explored for quite a long ways. The Giant's Finger, some standing stones, a Brebin's Imbibatorium, where you can find some extremely illegal appleberry brandy, and Camp Gold Thistle, relocates every few weeks. The brigands, thieves, and charlatans of the Gold Thistle gang are a superstitious lot. They wear charms and take no action without auguries. The gang maintains an uneasy alliance with the Riverkeepers, paying tribute to the League in exchange for information. And again, all of these have random tables that are going to shift what is actually happening there. There's rumors and encounters, just like before, and there is an actual castle that you can explore here. The twist here is that this castle isn't actually a castle. It's like a shell of a castle that's totally empty on the inside. The whole thing is an illusion. It's run by the Gunlaks, a family of anarchs and iconoclasts who never pledged themselves to Arthur, and now they often thwart the Silvered Nobles and the Conclave. This actual family doesn't even really exist anymore. There's a number of people who have kind of taken on the roles of this fabled family and are putting on the performance, so to speak, if people interact with them. Here's a really great magic item, the Rings of the Polloi. So you got 5 gold rings that change the appearance of their wearers to match the wearer of the Master Ring. So what that allows you to do is to have one character who appears to be in like 6 different places at the same time, but many different people are just playing that role or looking like that person. You can go visit the Champion and Blackguard Inn, which is a really fun inn where you can participate in a game of vows where you take increasingly large boasts about what you can do, and you have to try and at least fulfill it. Lots of different interesting regulars and different connections and that you can make here, and you can also pick up plenty of work if you want to be more of a mercenary. You can meet Sir Amos and the Quest of the Weeping Beast, which is a little bit like Sir Pellinor and the Questing Beast from Arthurian legends. This particular region has a dungeon called the Inverted Manse of the Star-Shattered Wizard, which is a great name. Basically, this used to be a wizard tower, but then it was hit by a giant meteor, and the whole thing was inverted. It was like punched into the ground and turned inside out. So this used to be the top layer of the tower, and now it's the bottom. The whole thing's been punched downward. And as a result, everything has been flipped upside down. So all of the chairs and furniture are on the ceilings, and you are walking, or ceilings as you would see it as you walk along the floors, and you are walking on what used to be the ceiling. Lots of great trick and trap ideas like the Ice Flame Antechamber, where there's some bowls of blue fire that can be controlled with music and by singing the right arpeggios. You can see what the environment looks like here as you're kind of walking on the ceiling and the floor is above you. This just allows for even more interesting interactions because all of these things aren't stuck to the ceiling, just gravity is reversed for them. So if you picked up that chair and pulled it down and you let go, it would fall back upwards. I can think of all sorts of shenanigans that players could get up to using that feature. You can find a Narcissus mirror, which can trap your reflection in it. So you leave, but your reflection remains in the mirror and continues to mirror whatever you're doing wherever you are. When you initially discover it, it's actually containing the reflection of Lady Violetta, who is one of the most important characters in the entire setting. So this allows you to basically spy on her and figure out what's happening politically. Of course, you could have a very large reward if you manage to get it back to her. The next region is Becqueshire, where you can find the Beastly Hill or the Salmarie Chapel. There's larger areas like the Hungry Amphitheater, where thespian spirits await unsuspecting volunteers to join them on stage, where a strong performance brings great rewards and even greater dangers. Because if you don't play your cards right, you could be trapped doing plays forever with these ghosts. There's Neverune Hall, where two elderly sisters are locked in a perpetual feud, where they keep recruiting people to cause problems for the other one. However, you'll discover is that they don't actually hate each other, because if one of them manages to kill off the other, she'll immediately regret it and then come after you for daring to kill her sister. There's the Perfumed Tomb of the Necropoet, which is a fun take on the undead. A lot of it has to do with the language of the undead, where as you pick up more and more of these words, you gain more control over the undead that you'll encounter here. But as this happens, you start caring less and less about being alive as you become more one of them, more attuned to them. So that has some very deadly consequences for you. There's elements of this dungeon that I like quite a bit because it feels very mythic, like the underworld in Greek mythology, where you can find your quiet rest deep beneath the earth and never return to the surface again if you are lured in by all of these forces. The Gnarl is a more forested region. It has areas like the Garden of Memory, the Midwife, and the Breachborn. So this is where a witch is kind of tending to this growing god that she is slowly nurturing with the help of lots of clones of men that she keeps producing to help her do all the work. Probably the most remarkable feature about this book is just its sheer density, the sheer amount of content. It really has that attitude that what makes a D&D session great is not necessarily the writing, it's not necessarily the rules, it's the stuff that you give the players to interact with. And this just packs so much of it in here. All of it is designed to be fun to mess with, it's fun to explore, it's fun to interact with. This is the kind of D&D that I love. The last region in the book is Cimbrine, which is the main city, and it's mostly random tables of just content that your players can interact with as they explore and recuperate from their main missions. You can visit the Mercantile District, the Broken Bull Market. You can go to the Sacred Storehouse of Elbeck, Vilhaus Neil's Bidding House if you want to auction off some interesting magic items. You can visit the Noble District, where there's all sorts of encounters you can have, like some drunken nobles and their hangers-on have spilled out of a tavern and into the street, the building is on fire, and the fire is spreading. This is not an adventure that is afraid for big things to happen and for things to be seriously shaken up. Lady Violetta's floating chateau, so this is one of the most important people in the setting. She's the person whose reflection is captured in that mirror that you can discover earlier. And she's permanently in a floating chateau because there was a prophecy that she would be killed by a landslide. So she just refuses to go on land, problem solved. Go to the Cerulean Hall, which was Arthur's palace, and you can meet with Lord Unther, who's in the empty suit of armor that's serving as his steward. He just has these very cryptic proclamations, like you can use these random tables to say, the first prisoner stares from the forest and craves the honey of the stars. The baffled ministers will pretend to know what the lordship means. Should the PCs remember a proclamation and recognize an echo of it in something that they later encounter, grant them some special insight or a bonus to a relevant roll. You go to the Temple District and find the Plaza of the Righteous Weeping, the Cathedral of 100 Suns, the apartments of Archmystagogue Banbo. So many different evocative and interesting locations to deal with. So to sum up, what is the Valley of Flowers all about? This is a setting that is focused on interactivity and density of things to do. It is frankly one of the best examples of that I've ever run into. Did it deserve the Silver Any Award for Best Setting of the Year? Well, maybe. I do like the setting quite a bit, but the setting itself is not exactly what stood out to me. What stood out to me is how much stuff there is to do and how easy it would be to throw players into that and immediately have them set out on adventures and have those adventures ripple out through the setting and cause more problems and have more repercussions. It's only like 140 pages long, but if this was written by one of the big RPG companies, I could easily see this being 300 or 400 pages. The authors have done a great job in condensing it and making everything easy to reference. There is a lot going on in this adventure, so I don't know if I would recommend it for brand new OSR groups. But if you have your feet underneath you and you've done some starting adventures and you have a pretty good sense of how to play an old school game and you want to tackle a larger region with a lot of things to do, this would be a absolutely fantastic pick. And I'm really curious to see what they do with Volume 2. Are they just going to add more hexes? Are they going to go in a completely different direction? I am very interested to see. As always, links to where you can pick this up in PDF or in print form will be down in the description below. And thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you next time.